Welcome back everyone. So in the last video, we have solved count salary category, which was 36th question in the SQL 50 series. So in this video, we are going to tackle employees whose manager left the company. So let's dive in. Okay, so in this question, we are given employees table, which has 4 columns: employee ID, their name, their manager's ID, and their salary. So let me read the description. So that is, in the SQL, employee ID is the primary key for this table. This table contains information about the employees, their salary, and the ID of their managers. Now, some employees do not have a manager. Their manager ID is null. Now, what we have to do is we have to find the IDs of employees whose salary is strictly less than 30,000 and whose manager left the company. When a manager leaves the company, their information is deleted from the employees table, but the report still have their manager ID set to the manager that left. Now, we have to return the result table order by employee ID, and the result format is in the following example. Okay, so in the first example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 employees. Now, what we have to return is we have to return the ID of employees whose salary is strictly less than 30,000 and whose manager left the company. Now, when a manager left the company, there will be no entry for that employee in the employee table. But if some employees reports to that manager, then the reports to will still be there in the employee table. Okay. So, for example, this is the employee Mila whose salary is 60,000, which is greater than 30,000, and this person reports to manager with manager ID of 9, and there is a manager with this ID. So this entry is not what we want. Now there is another employee with employee ID of 12, which is also what we don't want because there is no manager ID in this entry. So next entry is still invalid for us. Then an employee with an employee ID of 1 reports to manager with an employee ID of 11, and there is a manager with an employee ID of 11, so this is also not a valid entry for us. Now ninth with an employee ID of 9 is also not a valid entry, and with an employee ID of 11, Josiah, whose manager ID is 6, but there is no entry for an employee with an employee ID of 6, which means this employee left the company. So employee ID 11 is what we want. So this employee reports to a manager who is not in the employees table. Okay, and the other thing is that salary is strictly less than 30,000. Okay, so let me write the query so that we can understand it better. So what we have to do is we have to select something from employees table where let me give an alias to this employees table, that is, let's say E. So E dot what salary is strictly less than 30,000, and what the E dot manager ID is not null, and E dot manager ID is not in, or not in, not in what? Select employee ID from employees. Okay, so let me explain you this query once, but before that, let's run the query to see the result. Okay, we'll select everything. Okay, so this is what we got. So what we were doing is, in the where clause, we write that the salary must be less than 30,000 and the manager ID should not be null. Okay, and the other condition is that there is a manager ID that should not exist in the employees table. Okay, now this condition we can remove. So now the latest condition is that E dot salary that should be less than the 30,000 and the manager ID should not exist in the employees table. Okay, so if the manager ID is null, then null not in, select employee ID from employees. So these are the employee ID, there will be no null in this. But if E dot manager ID is null, then this condition is false. Okay, this condition will not be evaluated because E dot manager ID is null and the check will not be performed. Okay, so e dot salary is less than 30,000, that will be correct. But if e dot manager id is null, okay, then the not in will not be performed. Instead, e dot manager id will return false to this where clause. So now what we have to return is, we have to return only the employee id. So we have to only select e dot employee id. Something went wrong, so let us see. And e dot manager id not in select. Okay, we have used and two times. So so our test case has been passed. Now we'll try to submit this. Okay, okay, so our solution got rejected, and the reason being, we are asked in the question that we have to return the result table order by employee id. So we have to also order by e dot employee id, and now we'll submit again. And all the test case has been passed. Now we want to do some optimization in this query, and that is for each employee we are doing that e dot manager id not in this query. Now this is a query that if there is no, like, SQL do some optimization, that if this query is run multiple times, then the SQL might optimize this and store this in cache. But let's suppose that SQL don't do this and run this query for each entry. Now what we can do is, we can store the employee id in a temporary table. Okay, so we'll create with emp ids as this. Now what we'll do is, we'll select employee id from this table. Select employee id from emp id. So this query will still run for each employee, but now the fact is that in the previous query we were selecting employee id from this table. Okay, and now in this query we are selecting employee id from this left part only. Okay, so that's the minor optimization. Okay, so let's submit this again. Okay, so our solution got accepted, and that's it. Thank you.